Hi, my name is Kevin Hovland. I'm Deputy Executive Director at NAFSA, the Association for International Educators.
Hi, my name is Jenny Lee, and I'm a professor at the Center for the Study of Higher Education at the University of Arizona.
I think the goals of the collaboration for NAFSA was really an opportunity to start a profound conversation about the role of scholarship and research in the daily working life of international educators.
From the research side and the ASHE community, internationalization is changing the face of higher education as universities are becoming more global, and we're thinking about internationalization beyond just study abroad, but affecting so many aspects of higher education. And so as the field is growing and the numbers of students participating increasing, there's become a greater need to better understand the challenges, but especially from the front lines and working with and through international affairs offices in our own campuses.
For NAFSA, it was complicated, I think, because we have 10,000 members, and those members have different work roles and different relationships with scholarship and research. And so we really needed to know more about how individuals faced questions that could be researched on a daily basis. And I think when we started the conversation, we were really thinking about how do we help NAFSA members become better consumers of scholarship and research? And I think through the course of the collaboration, we came to really appreciate scholars to help think about questions in new ways and to think about using the daily experiences of practitioners to inform the goals and the objectives of the research itself.
We had a series of conversations about where to take this, given there's so many ways to be looking at internationalization in higher education. And we actually made this into a research project informed by practitioners. And so we surveyed NAFSA members, and through that we're able to glean directly some of the leading issues in their day-to-day work.
So we gathered a task force of scholars and researchers and interested parties from NAFSA as well as from ASHE to really explore deeply, I think, what the role of research could be in an association like NAFSA that was full of practitioners. Through the survey of our NAFSA members, we actually had a pretty wide group of members giving us their thoughts on both their daily work, the areas in which they felt that their expertise was well-grounded, and those areas where they felt that they could use some help in identifying best practices from the research.
At a recent ASHE conference, we presented a summary of the findings, reviewing some of the major and leading issues for NAFSA members that would inform higher education scholarship. We also have plans to present this similarly at an upcoming NAFSA conference, as well as publications and a series of reports to inform both sides.
Over time, I think the conversation began to develop more nuance about the co-creation of scholarship and research, and how NAFSA members on the front lines, working with students, working with faculty, could inform the agenda of researchers and could help create both the need for greater research and to fill that need with deep thinking about scholarship and researals.
A big lesson in our conversations was to understand that the priorities of international educators and professionals are not necessarily the same as what's being dominated in the literature. And that was an important reminder in tapping into the everyday work to understand what really matters, what's urgent, what needs to be studied, and what is being neglected.
I think one of the most profound lessons that we learned was that in having this kind of conversation, the vocabulary that both sides were using was different, and that it took a while to get used to what we were actually talking about in ways that could open up opportunities for exchange and collaboration.
Understanding the values and priorities, and that they may not necessarily be the same for scholars and for practitioners. For example, for scholars, we often rely on the literature and what has been published thus far. I think there's a way, and often we observe topics perpetuating themselves because there's such an abundance of that topic in the literature. And in our series of conversations with NAFSA, I was quite surprised to learn some of the other priorities that are not covered in the literature. And that was very informative as I think about my future work and what really matters to those who may be the consumers but informers of this work, and how this could be implemented and whether or not they even care. So in that regards, it's been very enlightening in terms of the value of the work, but also the priority and the urgency of certain topics over others.
I definitely think the relationships that we've built on the individual basis will continue, and that through those individual relationships, the institutional connections should continue as well.
Ultimately, for those researchers of international higher education, what has been so key is working with leading organizations and those who are guiding these conversations and holding major conferences that unfortunately many international higher education researchers do not attend. I think that the presidential session at ASHE held last year was also a key signal in welcoming both parties to the conversation, not a one-directional flow of information, but signaling the importance of these type of collaborations and encouraging members from both sides to attend one another's conferences. And it's been wonderful working with Kevin in that regard.